Morgan Metzer imagined 2021 would be the fresh start she needed. Instead, barely an hour into the new year, a nightmare took over her life.
This was something that was so heinous and so egregious to kind of think about what he did to the person that he was supposed to love.
It's sickening to me that when this happened to her, it's sickening to me that y'all think that I would do this.
Morgan Metzer was born in 1988 in the charming town of Roswell, Georgia. She was the youngest among 3 siblings and grew up in a comfortable life with her parents Richard and Linda. Morgan and her family were close and were well liked in the community. Surrounded by nature, she had taken horseback riding as a hobby. She made many friends growing up because of her fun and outgoing personality. In her freshman year at Roswell High School, Morgan met an older schoolmate named Rodney William Metzer Jr., also known as Rod. Despite him being a senior, they became close and started dating not long after. The couple even attended prom and homecoming together. The thrill of first love completely consumed Morgan. Despite her father's gut feeling about Rod, she continued the relationship. In her eyes, Rod was the perfect man for her. After Morgan graduated from high school in 2006, things moved quickly for the young couple. They decided to live together and were engaged a year later. Finally, the couple was married on April 19, 2009. Married life was pure bliss for Morgan. She spent her days taking care of Rod while working at a salon. In March 2010, they moved to Harmony on the Lakes in the nearby suburb of Canton, Georgia. The affluent resort-style community had picturesque views and multiple amenities. The Metzers lived in a sprawling home with a large backyard. Morgan, who loved cooking, frequently hosted cookouts and pizza nights. Soon, Morgan became pregnant, and Rod was excited to be a father, eagerly getting involved throughout the pregnancy. On March 15, 2011, their son Kevin William Metzer was born. His first name was a tribute to Rod's younger brother, who succumbed to leukemia 2 years earlier. Unfortunately, their child had severe heart defects, which needed surgeries and a transplant. Kevin made it through the first surgery but never recovered. He lived a brief life of only 18 days. The couple was devastated but thankful for the short time they had with their firstborn. Rod became busy with a new job, while Morgan coped by drinking and having fun with friends. In August 2011, Morgan found out she was pregnant with fraternal twins. Thankfully, a few months later, in March 2012, Morgan gave birth to their healthy twins. Life was bright again for the Metzers, unaware of the events that would soon test their little family. Despite knowing each other since they were young, Morgan had no idea how wealthy Rod's family was. She was surprised when her husband's aunt and uncle left him with stock accounts after they passed away. The inheritance was substantial enough for him to quit his day job at an auto works company and focus on stock trading. Rod, however, struggled with his new career path. Morgan would hear him yelling from his home office whenever he was frustrated with work. Concerned, she would offer to help, but this only made Rod angrier. He even blamed their family's supposed lavish lifestyle for putting immense pressure on him. Eventually, his outbursts escalated, and he would throw things or punch the walls. Despite Rod's unnerving behavior, Morgan brushed it off, convincing herself that this was due to his upbringing. His parents were argumentative and frequently shouted as well. Morgan decided to simply stay away whenever her husband was frustrated. As their children grew up, however, she noticed how differently Rod treated them. He was irritated and behaved like the twins inconvenienced him. They were not allowed to sleep beside him and were forbidden from playing with paint or glitter, which he found messy. When the twins made mistakes, he shouted at them. This led to his wife and children being cautious around him, fearing his anger. Things only escalated, so eventually, during Rod's outbursts, Morgan would lock herself and the children inside the large closet in her daughter's room. The closet door was their only shield against the angered father, who would stand outside, screaming horrible things. To keep her children calm, the mother pretended this was a game and would put headphones on the twins to shield them from their father's hurtful words. These terrifying episodes would last from 20 minutes to 2 hours. When Rod calmed down, he would apologize and promise to do better, which Morgan always believed. Given that they met when they were young and this was her first romantic relationship, Morgan thought these instances were part of a normal marriage. After all, even when he was mad, Rod never physically harmed her or the children. Their family and friends were unaware of these horrible conditions, as the Metzers continued to appear as the same outgoing couple who loved throwing parties in their home. In 2017, Morgan and Rod launched an interior decoration company, keeping them busy with both their business and raising their children. However, behind the facade of success, a darker reality unfolded. Rod's mood swings grew more volatile and aggressive. Often, Morgan found herself retreating to her parents' home with the twins for safety. During one of these incidents, Rod threatened to harm himself, pointing a weapon at his head if she left. Shaken and terrified, Morgan stayed, convinced that leaving would push him over the edge. Rod twisted the situation, blaming her for his actions, and she began to believe she was the cause of his erratic behavior, hoping things would improve. But things only deteriorated. During one particularly heated argument, Morgan threatened to leave with the twins. In a shocking move, Rod edged closer to the stairs and intentionally slipped, tumbling down in front of their children. He manipulated the situation further by telling the twins their mother had pushed him. The children, distressed and crying, left Morgan in disbelief at her husband's manipulative tactics. Rod's outbursts extended beyond their home. During a friend's birthday celebration on a boat, Morgan, exhausted from drinking, went to rest in the cabins. Rod followed, accusing her of embarrassing him and calling her immature. When she tried to avoid the argument, he struck her in the face, breaking her nose. Rod's demeanor then shifted to one of false concern, claiming his violent reaction was due to her supposed drunkenness and aggression. He spun a narrative to their friends to explain her injuries, but they saw through his lies and urged Morgan to leave him. Despite their pleas, she stood by him, trapped in a cycle of abuse and manipulation. In 2020, Rod's abuse escalated as he began to force himself on her, dismissing her refusals as dramatics. This horrifying realization pushed Morgan to file for divorce. During the separation, she and the twins stayed at her parents' house, finding solace and support there. Yet, Rod continued to harass her with calls and messages, promising to change. One night, he parked in her parents' driveway, refusing to leave until she spoke to him. The police eventually intervened, but Rod's persistence was unrelenting. Days later, he reluctantly signed the divorce papers, believing he could still win her back. As part of the agreement, Morgan and the twins returned to their home in Canton, while Rod moved out. Determined to protect her family, Morgan updated the security system, removing Rod's access and installing new locks and cameras. Despite the finalized separation, Rod's presence loomed. He showed up uninvited at Halloween and Thanksgiving celebrations, using the children as leverage to stay. His unannounced visits made Morgan feel unsafe, and when she confronted him, he left in a rage. Morgan Metzer imagined 2021 would be the fresh start she needed. Instead, barely an hour into the new year, a nightmare took over her life. This was something so heinous and egregious to think about what he did to the person he was supposed to love. It's sickening that this happened to her. It's sickening that y'all think I would do this. Morgan was born in 1988 in Roswell, Georgia, the youngest of 3 siblings. She grew up in a loving family, surrounded by nature, and took up horseback riding. In her freshman year at Roswell High School, she met Rodney William Metzer Jr., known as Rod, a senior. They quickly became close, attending prom and homecoming together. Despite her father's reservations about Rod, Morgan saw him as the perfect man. After high school, they moved in together, got engaged, and married in 2009. Life seemed blissful, and they settled in a picturesque home in Canton, Georgia. Morgan, who loved cooking, often hosted gatherings. In 2011, they welcomed their son Kevin, who tragically passed away after only 18 days due to severe heart defects. The couple was devastated, and Morgan coped by drinking and socializing with friends. Later that year, Morgan became pregnant with twins, and in 2012, they welcomed their healthy babies. Life seemed bright again, but Morgan was unaware of the storm brewing. Rod's hidden wealth came to light after his aunt and uncle left him a substantial inheritance, allowing him to quit his job and focus on stock trading. However, he struggled with his new career, leading to frequent violent outbursts. Rod's behavior worsened, and Morgan found herself and the children hiding in a closet during his rages. She tried to shield the twins by making a game out of it, but the situation was far from playful. Rod's manipulative and abusive actions took a toll on the family, leading to a terrifying and ultimately life-changing ordeal for Morgan. In the end, Morgan's strength and resolve led her to seek a safer life for herself and her children, breaking free from Rod's control and starting anew, despite the lingering shadows of her past. Days before the new year, in December 2020, Morgan received an unexpected email from Rod. He claimed to have been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and expressed feelings of loneliness and fear. Despite their tumultuous history, Morgan felt a pang of sympathy. Wanting to support him during this difficult time, she agreed to let him stay the night with the children, allowing him to sleep on the couch. However, Rod used the opportunity to try and reconcile with her. When she refused, he left. Morgan didn't hear from him again until the morning of December 31st, 2020, when Rod sent her text messages asking her out on a date. She declined, stating she would turn off her phone for the night. Morgan had planned to stay at her parents' house that night, but decided at the last minute to spend the evening alone in her Canton home. She set the alarm system, watched a movie, and eventually fell asleep, looking forward to a quiet, relaxing night. But sometime after midnight, she was jolted awake by an uneasy feeling of being watched. To her horror, a masked figure stood by her bedroom doorway. Morgan screamed and tried to get off the bed, but the intruder slammed her back down and aimed a firearm at her head. The masked assailant covered her face with a pillowcase and, using an altered voice, claimed she had messed with the wrong people. Demanding her jewelry, the intruder ignored her assertions that she had none in the house. Terrified but trying to stay calm, Morgan was struck on the head with the weapon and had her hands and legs bound with zip ties. She was then shoved onto the mattress, where the intruder strangled her and tried to smother her with a pillow. Struggling to breathe, Morgan felt her life slipping away. Just as she was close to passing out, the assailant suddenly let her go. The intruder then dragged her by the hair out to the deck, still with the pillowcase over her head. He threatened her about some supposed transgression she had no knowledge of and warned her to stay face down until she heard 3 car honks, or else she would be shot. Paralyzed with fear, Morgan obeyed. She heard footsteps walking away but no honking signal. Terrified to move, she lay still, unsure if any movement would cost her her life. Minutes passed, and Morgan eventually heard footsteps again. Dread filled her, fearing her attacker had returned. To her surprise, she heard Rod's voice from the deck, asking worriedly what had happened. He immediately helped her up, removed the pillowcase, and untied her. At 2 a.m., Rod called 911 to report the attack on his ex-wife. When the police arrived, they began taking statements from Rod and Morgan. Morgan relayed her horrific ordeal in detail, but couldn't identify the intruder due to his mask and disguised voice, which she described as sounding like Batman. The investigators initially commended Rod for being there to save his ex-wife, but as they asked more questions, suspicions arose. Rod explained that someone had tapped on his apartment window and said Morgan's name, prompting him to check on her. This story, along with the fact that the intruder only took Morgan's phone and not any jewelry, seemed improbable to the investigators. While checking Rod's phone, an officer found copies of Morgan's text messages and several photos of her, including one taken while she was in the shower. Rod admitted to secretly copying her text messages and taking photos of her during his recent stay, but he insisted his story was true. Despite his claims, the investigators found his account unbelievable and arrested him for lying to law enforcement. The investigation soon revealed damning evidence against Rod. In his car, they found a handgun and zip ties matching those used on Morgan. A search of his apartment uncovered an open pack of the same zip ties and store security footage showed Rod purchasing them shortly before the attack. His phone and computer contained searches like how long to choke someone unconscious and how to change the sound of your voice. Additionally, they found a letter from Rod about ending his life and a forged hospital invoice among his belongings. Prosecutors pieced together the events leading up to and on the night of January 1st. Assistant District Attorney Rachel Ash explained that Rod faked a cancer diagnosis to gain Morgan's sympathy and access to her house. During his stay, he copied her text messages, took photos of her in the shower, and tampered with the alarm system to facilitate his break-in on January 1st. Rod had stolen Morgan's phone and attempted to delete the security footage of his break-in, but the system continued recording his arrival. After attacking Morgan, he returned to his apartment, changed clothes, and came back to pretend to rescue her. Security cameras caught him knocking on the main door and going to the back deck where Morgan was. Authorities concluded that the crime was premeditated. Based on his letter about ending his life, they believed Rod's initial plan was to kill Morgan and himself. When he couldn't go through with it, he devised a plan to attack her in disguise and then save her, hoping this would win her back. Rodney Metzer Jr. pleaded guilty to 14 counts, including kidnapping, home invasion, first-degree burglary, aggravated battery, false imprisonment, possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, and invasion of privacy. He was sentenced to 70 years, with 25 years in prison and 45 years on probation. He'll be eligible for parole after 20 years. Finally free from her ex-husband's manipulation, Morgan began rebuilding her life with her children. Her family and friends remained a strong support system, ensuring that the twins would grow up feeling loved. Over the years, Morgan has slowly worked through the trauma left by years of manipulation and gaslighting from Rod. Despite still experiencing anxiety and moments of doubt, she has found strength in therapy and a deeper understanding of gaslighting. Morgan now speaks about her experience through interviews, a true crime show, and her TikTok page. She also attends an annual candlelight vigil held by Cherokee County to remember victims of domestic violence, where she thanks law enforcement and county officials for their support. Morgan Metzer hopes her story will raise awareness and help others in similar situations leave their manipulators earlier and live better lives. With every action, there's a consequence. And this time, Rod got caught and he's gonna pay for that.